All right, so today we're going to talk about the integration of TJX into the Israeli market. TJX is a company that we are going to be working with. They own Marshalls, TJ Maxx, those types of things. They have a few other businesses here in the States, and we're going to be looking at what kind of market we're going to be entering in Israel. So we're going to jump into some of the large hurdles, some of the small hurdles, talk about the different culture differences, those types of things. So the first one we're going to get into is the political hurdles. And the political hurdles we first want to talk about are currency. So right now in Israel, as of January 1st, 1986, they started using a new currency called the New Israeli Shekel. And the New Israeli Shekel is every 3.5 of those shekels is worth about $1 in the US. So we're going to have to look at using a different currency. The next political hurdle we're going to have to look at is security for employees and for customers. Since 1948, there has been 4 wars in Israel. That's a lot of wars in a short period of time. So that's something where they're always having to deal with conflict with people from Hamas, from Gaza, from the Palestinians. One of the things the Palestinians or Hamas does is they shoot random rockets into Israel across the border. So that's something where we're going to have to pay attention. We're going to have to map out where are the rocket shelters. What do we do in a situation like that? What do we do for our customers? What do we do in case there's a terrorist attack? Do we need to hire security? Do we need to have security outside of our stores or inside of our stores that need to be hired in order to protect our customers and our employees? Another political hurdle, the next one we're going to talk about, is taxes and tariffs. Since 1995, there was an agreement between the U.S. and Israeli government that ensured that all taxes that are being done there, so any taxes we receive through a company, are going to be then communicated over to the U.S. government so that we're not double taxed. So we're fortunate there that they have close ties. We're going to have to take our company and go to the what they call the registrar of companies, and that's where we register our company as a company that wants to do an LLC, that wants to do business in Israel. We have to be able to pay attention to what languages we're using. Generally, they are accepting of all English agreements, but there are some, like the final agreement that has to be signed has to be done in Hebrew. That's something that they culturally keep up on, and they maintain it has to be done in Hebrew. Another thing that we have to kind of look at is taxes and tariffs. So there could be tariffs that are put on goods that are imported, exported. Those are all things that we need to pay attention to. Same thing as here in the United States, and generally, because we're in good standing with Israel, it isn't too bad, but it is something we need to pay attention to. The next thing we want to look at is labor legislation. So this is going to be a big one. This is going to be big for the company in terms of our HR departments and what we what kind of benefits are people going to receive? What is the minimum wage? The minimum wage there right now is around $6.93, I believe, US, which would make it about 27 of the NIS, of the new Israeli money that they're using. We have to look at wage protections. We have to look at what kind of time off do we offer? What kind of how many hours of sick time are they offered per year? Does a employee have to work 1 full year before they get into be eligible for vacation? It tends to be over in Europe and overseas that holidays are longer. They receive more holiday hours than we do here in the U.S. So that's something we need to look at. What kind of PTO time do they get? Do they, that type of stuff is also something we need to look at. And then severance pay. So we We need to look at people who are having children. We need to look at what type of severance pay for people who are terminated in terms of employees. So those are all pretty big packages and pretty detailed that we're going to need to get into and find out about. Next one I want to talk about is packaging standards. So there are going to be different packaging standards in Israel than there are in the U.S. One of the main things, one of the most obvious, is that they use the metric system of measuring. So we are kind of isolated here in the U.S. in terms of the standard that we use for measuring. The metric system is generally used around the world, so I don't think it'll be that difficult of a transition for us, because generally if we're shipping overseas, we are using the metric system anyways. On the packaging, we're going to need to know what kind of language is being written. Is it going to have to be in Hebrew, and it's going to have to be in English. English is generally accepted everywhere, but it's something we want to be aware of, and we want to make sure that we have the correct language on, so that when we're distributing packages, people are able to understand what they're receiving. And another thing we have to make sure we put on is the country of origin. It's just like the U.S., any tags, that type of thing, the country of origin needs to be written on. So that's pretty standard, and that's something that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Next thing I want to talk about is banking. So Israeli banking, it tends to be difficult setting up a company. The U.S. is kind of the thing for that. I think that's all over the world, not just in Israel, but kind of any country. There's a lot of, the U.S. is very involved in terms of, is there any money laundering happening? Is there tax evasion, that type of stuff? So it makes it difficult to open up accounts in Israel, but it doesn't tend to be the Israelis' fault. You do need to be represented by an Israeli attorney, and the Israeli attorney is the one who will represent you and help you set up those accounts. We also have to look at transferring money. So if we're transferring money from Israel to the U.S., what types of transfer fees are involved? That's some investigation we need to do in terms of what bank we want to actually bank with. We want to look at who are our competitors banking with, because most likely they've kind of done the research, so then that can help minimize the amount that we have to do. Our next one is our cultural reception into this new country, this new area of the world. We have to figure out kind of what clothing offerings we are going to be providing to people. That's going to come down to a few different factors. Generally, we have a Jewish, Christian, and we also have a large Muslim population in Israel. So those three things are going to need to be considered. Where are our brick and mortar locations going to be? Are they going to be, if we're close to a mosque, then we want to look at more of kind of a traditional Muslim dress. We also want to look at, so not only religious factors, we want to look at, generally it's pretty warm in Israel. So they're pretty dressed down, as long as you're not around a religious city or religious sites. People tend to be pretty dressed down. Even their business attire is pretty casual. Compared to here, they generally do not wear suits, maybe only a couple times a year. Those are for very important meetings. So that's something we're going to have to pay attention to. We're also going to have to look at language barriers, and that's going to come up quite often. So it kind of goes along with the religious dress, but language barriers in terms of where our brick and mortar locations are. We're going to need to make sure we have employees that speak Hebrew, that speak English, and also Arabic. The Arabic language is going to be written, spoken, and those types of things. And that's something we can kind of, with market research, we'll be able to help determine what clothing offerings we want to offer, what kind of employees we're going to need to have in terms of their language. And also, one other thing that we kind of learned, and we kind of, during research, was we talked about was they have more of a relaxed timekeeping. So that's going to be in terms of people arriving to work and people leaving work, those types of things. We're going to have to look at the timekeeping is going to be a factor as well. So next up is our plan for success. So planning and distribution. We're going to have to look at local distributors. What distributors are we going to use? What distributors can we partner with? What distributors do we already have partnerships with that may have locations or may have employees in Israel? How can they help us? We're going to need to be doing audits to make sure that all the packaging is correct. Everything we had talked about previously. We're going to need to do customer surveys. We want to determine who our customers are, what class they belong to, how much money are they making, what can they afford, what are they looking to dress for, you know, are they going out on weekends, or are they more of a religious type where we're going to want something more conservative. We also want to look at our competitors. So what are our competitors already offering? What has made them successful? How long have they sustained in this culture? What are their advantages and what are our advantages? What are our disadvantages? We want to look at all of that. Another thing is we want to look at the time difference. So right now Israel is 7 hours ahead of our Eastern Standard Time zone. So business is going to be done at different times. We need to make sure that we're aware of that. We're planning meetings around that. We're planning our communication around that. You know, we may have to have people here who are kind of working on Israeli time to ensure that things are processed smoothly over there. Questions can be answered, those types of things. And that kind of rolls into our IT logistics. So we're going to have to look at setting up call centers there rather than just having them here. Or if we're going to have them here, we may have to look at more of a 24/7 base rather than a standard Eastern time zone. The availability of our people. And if we do have call centers here, we need to make sure that they're able to speak the language that's being translated across from Israel. So those are going to be important things that we look at, and those are going to be pretty big things that we're going to need to set up. All right. So getting into kind of our small scale items, this is kind of more identifying cultural logistics. So looking at the employee culture differences, looking at the language barriers, looking at religious holidays that are going to be celebrated over there. When are people going to need time off? They also have a large Muslim population, so we're going to have to look in terms of Muslims. Generally, there is prayer time 5 times a day. So we're going to need to look at, if we're having Muslim employees, we need to respect their religions. We need to respect that time that they need to pray to Allah. So that's something that we're going to have to roll into our business plans once we get moving over there. Another thing is dress attire. So work attire is going to have to be adjusted from what we are wearing here in the U.S. And we're going to have to respect the religious beliefs of the people over there and make sure that they are allowed to wear, you know, what they need to wear, while also being respectful to the other religions that they may be coexisting with while working or while shopping, those types of things. And another thing is the religious differences between employees. We want to make sure that they're respecting each other as well. So those are all things, kind of smaller scale items we're going to have to pay attention to. And this kind of continues off that. This is kind of a reception to how are we going to be recepted into this new culture, into this new country, in terms of sending our employees over there. So how will our religious beliefs be accepted? Are we going to be sending employees that we have to make sure they're open to different cultures, we make sure they're open to different religions, respecting and learning about different religions? What about our management team? So what kind of religious practices have we projected as a management team? How diverse is our management team? You know, we're going to need to look at accepting some people from their culture maybe into our management, into our board meetings, those types of things, so we can get different perspectives from Israel and not just the U.S. or the other countries that we're involved in. We're going to have to look at language barriers. That's something that's going to be a factor. Communication styles, body language, those are all different over in European countries, over in the Middle East. So we learned earlier that Israelis are more demonstrative when they speak. They can be more more aggressive when they're speaking. And it's not that they have an aggressive intention or a negative intention in what they're speaking. It's just that they speak more with their hands, and they speak more, they're more boisterous, more vocal. And so that's kind of how they've learned, and we need to be able to adapt to that and respect that and understand that it's not necessarily negative interaction that we're having. All right. Plan integration for employees. So this is, how are we going to integrate our employees into this new culture? Are we going to be offering up, potential training, cultural training courses here? Are we going to find online, online trainings that people can take before they move that way? I think that it's important to offer some incentive packages to employees who are willing to move there maybe for a few months and learn how to integrate into their culture, but also to train the new employees there. Most companies, offer packages where people can go, we'll put them up in an apartment for a couple months, and they will go over there and work and train and those types of things. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at. And religious trainings, that's something as well. Their religious beliefs are pretty strong over there, and I think that here in the U.S. we're not as exposed to those types of those religious beliefs. I mean, it depends on where you live and that type of thing, but for the most part, we don't have the whole population either being Jewish or Arab or Christian. We have many other religions, and these people here have a lot of very, very important religious sites. So a lot of them have strong beliefs, and that's something we're gonna need to pay attention to. So that's kind of my plan for us going over there. Those are the things that I think we really need to pay attention to. We're really going to need to focus on those types of things when we're integrating into this new culture in Israel. So hopefully this presentation was a success.